Have you ever felt like the world is spinning too fast? Like every day is a battlefield for your peace of mind? Emails, traffic, relationships, deadlines. It's a storm. But what if I told you the ancient Stoics had secret tools, practices most people have never heard of, that were designed for exactly this kind of chaos, not the usual stuff you've heard? Not just focus on what you can control, or memento mori. I'm talking about rare, raw, and practical Stoic tools, forgotten exercises that still have the power to recalibrate your soul in modern life. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or walking around like a robot. It's about mastery, inner mastery, the kind that can make you calm during an argument, clear when you're overwhelmed, and resilient when life doesn't play fair. Let's begin with a practice Epictetus hinted at but rarely gets talked about today. It's called voluntary discomfort. No, this isn't about cold showers or sleeping on a floor for likes. This is about stripping life down intentionally. One day a week, wear your most worn-out clothes, eat the simplest food, remove all luxury. Why? Because the Stoics believed anxiety often comes from our attachment to comfort. When we fear discomfort, we become slaves to it. But when we expose ourselves to it, on our terms, we remember that we can live with less, endure more, and fear less. Imagine what that does to your mind when real hardship hits. Next, there's a concept I call emotional contrast training. It's not in any Stoic manual word for word, but it echoes the spirit of Marcus Aurelius. Here's how it works. When you're having a good moment, say you're enjoying your coffee, your child smiles at you, the sunlight hits just right, pause and reflect. This is beautiful, and this will pass. The moment you do that, you build emotional resilience. Why? Because you're training your mind to appreciate the highs without clinging to them. So when the lows come, you're not devastated, you're prepared. That's Stoic strength, not avoidance of feelings, but perspective over them. Now, let's talk about something deeper, preparing for offense before it arrives. The Stoics didn't just deal with insults after the fact. They trained in advance. Seneca wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." One uncommon practice is what I call insult rehearsal. Every morning, imagine someone criticizes you, not just random noise, but a targeted biting comment, something that would normally pierce you. Visualize it, then detach from it. Analyze, is it true? Is it useful? If not, discard it. Do this enough times, and when real criticism comes, you'll meet it with a calm, studied mind instead of an emotional spiral. Here's another rare tool: deliberate contradiction. Cato the Younger used to wear odd clothing in public, not because he lacked style, but because he refused to be ruled by public opinion. Today, you can apply this subtly. Go out without makeup. Post something true, even if unpopular. Speak last instead of first. The goal isn't to be rebellious. It's to reveal to yourself how much of your anxiety is rooted in needing approval. When you challenge that root, even slightly, you begin to unearth your real self beneath the layers of performance. But what about those moments when emotion is already flooding you? When anger, fear, or shame already have a grip on your nervous system? That's when you use the pause and reframe protocol. This isn't a Stoic phrase, but it mirrors their practice. Before reacting, pause, even for 3 seconds, and ask, what would the wise version of me do here? Not the triggered version, not the wounded version, the wise version. This question is a switch. It activates the rational brain over the emotional. In doing so, you begin to sculpt the space between stimulus and response, the very space where Stoic power lives. Another powerful but lesser-known Stoic idea is the reverse view. Instead of seeing events from your perspective, imagine seeing them from the end of your life. You're on your deathbed. This argument with your coworker, would it matter? This comment online, would it shake your core? The traffic jam, the rejection, the delay. The Stoics would often walk among tombstones to remind themselves, this too shall pass, all of it. When you carry that view into your daily problems, you become untouchable. And then there's symbolic anchoring. The Stoics didn't believe in mystical charms, but they did believe in keeping physical reminders of philosophy close. Epictetus carried a seal ring with a quote. Marcus Aurelius kept personal notes that became his meditations. You can do the same. Wear a ring, a bracelet, even a tattoo, not as decoration, but as a mental anchor. Every time you look at it, let it ask, are you living according to your values right now? 1 second of awareness can change the entire trajectory of your reaction. Let's now shift to a tool I rarely see discussed, but one that changed my relationship with failure. Post-failure detachment. The Stoics were masters of separating outcome from effort. When something goes wrong, their question isn't, did I succeed? It was, did I act by virtue? Meaning, did I show courage, wisdom, temperance, justice? If yes, then the outcome is secondary. This mindset doesn't just reduce anxiety, it eliminates regret, because the focus isn't on winning. It's about showing up fully, one more thing. In modern Stoicism, we talk a lot about journaling. But there's a rare journaling method that deserves more attention: mental theater journaling. Here's how it works. At night, replay the day like a movie. See yourself in scenes. Where did you overreact? Where was your patient? Where did ego sneak in? Then, mentally reshoot the scene. Rehearse how the wiser you would have acted. This isn't fantasy. This is Stoic training. Your mind starts building the habits of who you want to be, not who you were by default. And speaking of default, here's something no one tells you about Stoicism. You don't become Stoic through reading, you become Stoic through resistance. Every time something tests you, someone interrupts you, disagrees with you, delays you, that is the gym of Stoicism. These aren't annoyances, they are invitations. The mundane is sacred if you know how to see it. That's what the uncommon practices teach us, to use life, not escape it. We often think ancient wisdom has to be lofty or poetic, but the Stoics were engineers of the mind. Practical, gritty, and rooted in reality. Their tools weren't made for temples. They were made for marketplaces, dinner tables, and street corners. They were made for people like you and me, navigating modern chaos with ancient courage. And here's the truth. Most people won't do these things. Most will stay in reaction, habit, and fear. But you're not most people. You're here, you're listening. You already know there's more to you than panic, impulse, or insecurity. The Stoics didn't aim to be perfect, they aimed to be present. Intentionally, boldly, daily. There's a lesser-known Stoic concept called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. At first glance, it might seem negative, even depressing. Why imagine everything that could go wrong? But here's the hidden strength in it. When you rehearse adversity in your mind, calmly and rationally, you strip it of its power. You stop fearing the unknown because you've already walked through it in thought. This isn't about pessimism. It's preparation. When I started visualizing the worst-case scenarios, failure, loss, embarrassment, not to wallow in fear, but to prepare my character to withstand them, I became unshakable. This practice, oddly enough, calmed my nerves before important decisions. I would ask myself, what if this goes badly? What if I get rejected? What if this fails? And then I'd answer, then I will endure, I will grow, I will move on. Suddenly, fear lost its sharp edge. Another uncommon Stoic practice is self-distancing. We often get tangled in our own emotions because we experience everything from the center of the storm. But Stoicism teaches us to step outside ourselves and observe our reactions as if they belonged to someone else. This mental shift is deceptively simple, but deeply transformative. When I'm overwhelmed, I picture myself as a character in a book or a figure in history. I ask, if I were reading about this person, how would I want him to act? This immediately reframes my emotional chaos into clarity. I stop acting from raw impulse and start acting from a chosen principle. Marcus Aurelius used this trick constantly. In his Meditations, he often wrote to himself as if coaching a dear friend, "Don't be ruled by pain. Don't let others dictate your peace." That act of inner dialogue, of talking to yourself not as a victim, but as a philosopher, is an underrated weapon against everyday distress. Now, let's talk about one of the most uncomfortable but powerful Stoic ideas, voluntary discomfort. We spend our lives trying to avoid pain, but the Stoics ran toward it on purpose. Seneca would sleep on the floor, fast from food, or wear simple, itchy clothing just to remind himself, I can endure this. I don't need luxury to live well. The goal wasn't self-punishment. It was liberation. If you've ever chosen to do something hard just because you wanted to prove to yourself you could, you've tasted the spirit of Stoicism. I started this practice by turning down small comforts, cold showers, long walks without a phone, leaving my bed when I didn't feel like it. At first, it was difficult, but then I began to notice something incredible. My tolerance for frustration grew. I became less reactive, more composed, and more in control of my inner state. When life threw real discomfort my way, I was already trained to handle it. Epictetus was born a slave. He had every reason to feel powerless. But instead, he taught one of the most empowering lessons of all. Focus only on what is within your control. Everything else, reputation, wealth, the opinions of others, is external. You can influence them, yes, but you don't own them. I took this to heart during a period when I felt utterly defeated, relationships falling apart, work unfulfilling, anxiety on the rise. I wanted to blame someone. But then I remembered Epictetus's words. You are not disturbed by events, but by your judgments about them. So I asked myself, what can I control right now? The answer was always the same, my mindset, my actions, my principles. Even in the middle of chaos, I found an island of control. And from that small foundation, I began to rebuild. One of the most humbling yet liberating realizations in Stoicism is this. You don't control outcomes, only your efforts. That mindset takes away the fear of failure. If I do my best and things don't work out, I haven't failed. I've practiced virtue. I've acted with integrity. And that is enough. Another powerful technique I rarely hear discussed is death awareness, memento mori. It sounds morbid, but it's clarifying. When you remember that you are going to die, trivial worries lose their grip. You stop postponing what matters. You stop fearing embarrassment or rejection. You become present. I have a small token on my desk, a coin that says memento mori. It's a simple reminder that life is short, but meaning is found in how you live, not how long you live. Every time I hesitate to say something important or pursue something difficult, I glance at that token. And it speaks, don't wait, live now. Act with courage. Death awareness isn't about fear, it's about focus. When you remember that time is slipping through your fingers, you stop wasting it on things that don't serve your soul. Now, here's one more Stoic habit that surprised me. Journaling not as expression, but as examination. Most people write to vent. Stoics wrote to sharpen their minds. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for publication. He wrote them to inspect his soul. Every morning or evening, he would reflect. Where did I fall short? Where did I act with strength? What do I need to remember tomorrow? I started doing this, and the results were immediate. I stopped repeating the same emotional mistakes. I became more honest with myself. My days felt less like a blur and more like chapters of a book I was consciously writing. When you write not just what happened, but what you learned, your life becomes a classroom. And every difficulty, a teacher. The most life-changing Stoic practices are the ones that seem small at first. But practiced consistently, they restructure your inner world. You don't need to read 10 philosophy books or move to a monastery. You need to pause for 10 seconds before reacting, to reflect for 5 minutes at night, to voluntarily do something hard today, to say, I don't control this outcome, but I control how I show up. These are practices for warriors of the inner life, for people who don't just want peace, but want to earn it. Let me ask you something. Which one of these practices resonated with you the most? Is it death awareness, radical responsibility, or maybe voluntary discomfort? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear how you're applying these in your life. And if this video gave you a moment of clarity or calm, consider liking and subscribing. There's more where this came from. Philosophy isn't just for the classroom. It's for the battleground of the everyday mind. Live with courage. Think with depth. And remember, your inner life is the only empire you'll ever truly rule.